All right, let's get right into it. Picture this for a second. You're in a scenario where someone raises their voice at you. Maybe it's a partner, a family member, or a coworker. The argument starts getting heated, the words are flying faster, the emotional temperature in the room is just spiking, and then your mind completely goes blank. And I don't mean blank like you've achieved some peaceful state of Zen calm. I mean blank like a powered-off phone. If that sounds familiar, well, you are definitely in the right place. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the absolutely fascinating involuntary protective protocols of your nervous system that cause this exact phenomenon. So, just to instantly lower your cognitive load, here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with the shutdown phenomenon, clear up the huge misconception between stonewalling and flooding, explore 4 traits shared by people who shut down, look at the relational cost, and wrap up with 5 highly actionable strategies to reconnect. Okay, part 1. The shutdown phenomenon. Let's look at why your mind goes completely blank. You know the feeling, right? When you shut down, you can physically see the other person's mouth moving, but the words just aren't landing. You literally can't think of a single thing to say, and honestly, you can't even feel what you were feeling just 2 minutes ago. The person you're arguing with might look at you and say, "Why aren't you saying anything? Do you even care?" And your honest-to-goodness answer is that you genuinely don't know what just happened to your brain. I want to validate that experience for you right now. You aren't choosing to be silent. You aren't being indifferent. Moving on to section 2, stonewalling versus emotional flooding. This is probably the biggest misconception out there. So, the famous relationship researcher John Gottman identified something called stonewalling as one of the 4 communication patterns that actually predict a relationship's breakdown. Now, stonewalling is an intentional withdrawal. It's used to avoid or control a situation. But, and this is absolutely crucial, not all shutdown is stonewalling. Emotional flooding is completely involuntary. It's a biological response from your nervous system. It is literally as automatic and involuntary as flinching when something flies at your face. It's a biological tsunami, guys, not a deliberate brick wall. And here is the biology behind it. When the emotional intensity in a conversation rises way too fast, your amygdala, which is basically your brain's threat detection center, fires off a massive alarm. It reads psychological danger, like rapid speech or feeling cornered, the exact same way it reads physical danger. So it floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. And this hormonal flood doesn't sharpen your thinking. It actually causes a prefrontal shutdown. The part of your brain responsible for language, logic, and complex reasoning, it literally goes offline. You haven't lost the argument, you've just temporarily lost access to your words. Gottman's research actually tracked this physiologically, which is wild. During emotional flooding, your heart rate can spike to well over 100 beats per minute. To put that into perspective, at that level of physical arousal, productive communication isn't just hard, it's neurologically impossible. Your nervous system is just trying to protect you, even if, unfortunately, it leaves the person you're talking to feeling totally dismissed. All right, section 3, the 4 shared traits. These are basically double-edged swords. Let's look at the first trait. Roughly 15 to 20% of the population has what's called high environmental sensitivity. Now, if you have this trait, you don't just feel emotions, you absorb them. You can walk into a room and instantly sense the tension. This makes you a deeply empathetic person. But in a conflict, it means you're carrying a double emotional load. Think of it like a computer. A person with low sensitivity is just running one program. I'm frustrated, here's my point. But the highly sensitive person, their brain is running way too many background apps. They're processing their own frustration, plus their partner's frustration, plus the shifting tones of voice, plus the body language. It's just way too many emotional data points at once. And as a result, boom, the system crashes. Trait 2 is having a strong internal processing style. Internal processors think deeply, one thought at a time, before they ever speak. In calm moments, this makes you an incredibly thoughtful communicator. But heated arguments demand rapid-fire, back-and-forth verbal responses. When an argument suddenly demands you to think, feel, speak, and listen all at the exact same time, an internal processor just freezes. You know when you think of the absolute perfect, most insightful comeback 2 hours later while you're standing in the shower? Yeah, the thought was there. You just couldn't access it in real time. Now, trait 3 takes us deep into neurobiology and your personal history, a nervous system wired for threat sensitivity. Listen, if you grew up in an unpredictable environment where raised voices meant real, tangible consequences, your brain actually wired itself to shut down just to survive. Fast forward to today, your partner might be starting a minor Tuesday night squabble over dirty dishes, but your amygdala? It doesn't know it's just dishes. It triggers the exact same survival alarm it learned back in childhood. This trait heavily correlates with avoidant attachment. You're withdrawing not because you don't care, but because historically, engaging felt incredibly dangerous. And finally, trait 4, cognitive coherence. This basically means you have a super high need for internal consistency and logical cause and effect. You absolutely refuse to just blurt out half-formed thoughts. The problem is, emotional arguments are rarely logical, right? They're messy. They're nonlinear. If an argument jumps between 3 different topics in 30 seconds, a mind that requires cognitive coherence simply cannot locate the logical thread fast enough to formulate a complete thought. So, you end up saying nothing at all. Section 4, the relational cost. This is the quiet erosion of trust. Arguments are a vulnerable thing. When your partner risks a hard conversation and they're met with this blank, frozen silence, the unintentional message they receive is, I am not here for you. Over time, they usually do one of 2 things. They either escalate and get louder to try and break through your wall, which of course only floods your worse, or they just give up trying altogether. And sadly, that's a reliable predictor of long-term relationship dissatisfaction. But there's a heavy personal cost here too. People who shut down tend to carry this persistent, hidden shame. You know you went blank when you really needed to show up, and it makes you feel kind of defective. This shame quietly erodes your self-trust. You start shrinking inward. You avoid conflict entirely. And you end up living a smaller, more guarded life because you've essentially learned that conflict is the place where you disappear. Section 5, strategies to reconnect. How we actually rewire this pattern. Okay, let's get into the solutions. Here is a 5-step, science-backed roadmap for expanding your window of tolerance and rebuilding how you communicate. Step 1 is the purposeful pause. You've got to catch the early warning signs of flooding. Maybe it's a tight chest, maybe your thoughts start speeding up. You have to catch it before you hit total shutdown. When you feel it, tell your partner you need a 20-minute purposeful pause. Research shows it takes about 20 minutes for your heart rate to actually drop back to baseline. And step 2 ties right into this. Build a shared language. Talk about this protocol with your partner when you are both calm, outside of an argument. That way, they know that when you take a pause, you're regulating your nervous system, not abandoning them. Step 3 is nervous system regulation. And honestly, the physiological sigh is your best friend here. It's a double inhale through the nose, followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Doing this activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest system. If you practice this daily, alongside things like breath work or cold exposure, you actually train and expand your biological capacity to stay present under stress. It's pure respiratory physiology, and it works. Step 4 is addressing the root. If your shutdown stems from early childhood, threat environments, therapies like EMDR or somatic therapy can be a real game changer. They help update your brain's old associations, teaching it that conflict handled well actually leads to safety, not danger. And finally, step 5, reframe what showing up actually means. Showing up doesn't mean having the perfect words instantly. It can simply mean saying, I'm overwhelmed right now, but I am not gone, and we will finish this. That one small shift from absolute silence to just naming your overwhelm changes the whole dynamic. So, if you take nothing else away from this explainer today, please hear this. You are not broken. You are not cold, and you're not manipulative. You just possess a nervous system that cares enormously and is working overtime trying to protect you. The exact same traits that cause you to flood are the traits that make you deeply perceptive and wonderfully empathetic. Which brings us to our final thought. The goal here isn't to suddenly become someone who is loud and quick in an argument. The goal is just to expand your capacity enough to stay present through the discomfort. Because the conversations that matter the most about what you need, what you feel, and who you love, they require you to show up. You absolutely deserve to be heard. So the question is, will you use these tools to expand your capacity and stay present? Share this explainer with someone who needs to understand you a little bit better and start rewiring your pattern today.